So I'm Chris DeFaria. I'm the president of animation and digital production at Warner Brothers. So that means I oversee, obviously, an animation studio there, but also all the visual effects for the feature films, 3D conversions for the feature films, and then something that's we spend a lot of time talking about digital production, which is the integration of the new tool sets that we're relying on, digital-based tool sets, into the production of feature films. What I'm lucky with my job is I sort of sit, I think, at the intersection of technology and storytelling. And that's really my access into the material at Warner Brothers. So where we enter, or I enter in, or people that work with me enter into the process is when a movie makes its way to Warner Brothers and there's some momentum for it, either by there's a great cast, the script is terrific, or a great director is signed up, quickly the script will make its way over to me. And I'll have a chance to look at it. And I think the question at that moment is, look, is there something out there, some new tool, some new way of making this movie that, sure, it might be cheaper, but probably more important, is there something we can provide the audience they've never seen before? That's really my charge a lot of the time in looking at a movie. Now, of course, immediately you have to sort of make that, I guess, operational. And so we're meeting very quickly with the director and talking about the reality of the movie they're making and some of the practical aspects of it, because in the end there's, while there might be 4 or 5 amazing things we can do in a movie, there's also 2,000 things that just have to get done. And so we spend a lot of time breaking a movie down and making sure that we have an accurate look at what the real job of the film is. But the place where the most, I think people in my job, and certainly I have the most impact, is in being able to sit with a filmmaker or sit with a studio even before we have a filmmaker and say, there's an opportunity here to do something that's maybe never been done, or at least something that an audience will recognize as truly unique and worth getting out of their seats, and going to the movies for. Best example probably recently was Gravity. It's a movie where the technical solution to it actually provided the key to the marketing to it. It truly was an experience that no one had seen before in film. After that, I guess the Lego movie this past year. It's a completely different kind of film, but again, what we solved on that with the look and the feel of a miniature movie, of a movie made with miniatures of little Lego pieces, immediately became both a technical challenge, but also the key to the profile of the movie in the marketplace. I think there's a lot of people involved in the decision of a studio to make a movie. I'm one of the voices. I mean, what you're trying to do at a studio, the studio is trying to do itself, is build a consensus within the studio proper for a movie. And that consensus is going to involve people that work primarily with writers. It's going to involve the president of the studio. It's going to involve marketing, obviously very importantly. It's going to involve other ancillary things, consumer products and games. It's going to involve all of the people who are dedicated to feature films are going to have a chance to look at this. And sometimes the job of an executive is to go around, and it's like building a consensus. It's like winning a popularity contest. You get people to start seeing the movie that could be out there. I think we also have a mission. We know what we're doing. We know we're trying to get a movie that people are going to go to. So, up front and early, you're trying to imagine the film in the marketplace and how will it do. You're of course evaluating on its individual merits and its artistic merits and the people involved. But if you work at a studio, you have to be thinking, what's it going to look like when there's an ad out on the street? And what are we going to be selling here? And make sure that that quality exists and that we also make sure we support it. There's not a whole lot of give, there's a lot of take in that. I mean, when I look at a script, particularly if there's one that the studio says, we want to make this movie, I don't have the opportunity to say, I don't think we can. What it is we're going to figure out how. And so the nervous thing, I take it for granted now, but it is kind of nerve-wracking that we often, and I know I'm not alone in the business in saying this, often go down the path of beginning to make a movie, not quite sure how we're going to make it in the end. But knowing, in most cases, we have about 18 months to figure it out. And we better know how to make it in the last 4 or 5 months after we've spent 3/4 of the budget. And so far, we've landed that every time. And our partners in that, the companies that we rely on, it's ILM's 40th birthday this year. They're being honored here. But the DDs, the ILMs, the frame stores, the MPCs, and countless other companies, those are partners in those problems for us. So we go to them early on and say, you think we're going to figure out how to make this person fly or how to make this creature speak? And we all sit in a room and we all kind of nod and go, yeah, I think we can. Then we take another drink and then we get back into it. So we start with a breakdown of the movie, and that's just a definition of what we think the work is. And that takes about a few weeks to get done. But in the end, we end up with documentation. It's about this thick, 150 pages that describes in pretty specific detail what the challenges of the movie are. We then do an analysis of that ourselves and look at what actually is going to be required to pull this off. And like you said, there's a whole list of what we know how to do, then there's a whole list of what we don't know how to do. We then go out to the community of companies that we work with, and some companies we haven't worked with. But I mean, at the core of that are long-standing, trusting relationships we have with these companies. We've done a lot of work with them in the past. We know that they're going to step up for us. We know they're going to put their best people forward. We know a lot of the people within the company. So we do an analysis very early of who we think we should be in business with on this movie. And it will go to what technology are they developing, what technology do they already have, of course, in-house, but also what their capacity is and what their current slate is, because we need to make sure that we're the most important movie there when we're there. That's important to us. But in the end, we end up really relying on a small group of companies for the particularly challenging stuff, companies that we've done business with in the past and that we know we can trust going forward. I need these vendors not just to bring their A game, I need them to remain in business. And it's a very competitive business out there. I will say that it's not a well-managed business on all fronts, on anybody's front. I mean, the shows are all well-managed, but the actual business, you can ask anybody that's in it, is not a great business. It's not a great business model. It's hard to do bids for work that you don't really know what it is, and then to have a director come in and change their mind, and to sort of have taken on responsibility for that. So I think we have to be very smart about this as a studio and understand that the business model, which offers advantages to us for sure, right, is a very difficult one for the vendors that we have to rely on. And so we really do spend a lot of time trying to make sure that we create an environment that is innovative, competitive, and fair. And so we do analyze what a company's working on. We do look at what the original bid was, and we do try to make sure, we do analyze what their fiscal situation is, for instance, because a number of companies in the past few years have run into real trouble, and some have gone out of business. And not only does that represent a risk for us, but if my chief goal is to get a competitive and innovative environment for our work, then we have to support that by encouraging innovation and risk-taking, and we have to also provide a stable flow of work to a variety of vendors. So we try to mix it up. We try to bring a lot of vendors to the table, to the shows. And then also that works to our advantage in the end, because increasingly movies are being worked on, addressed changes, often in response to audience previews, very late into the production process. And so you get a movie 3 months before it's supposed to be released, and we have an audience preview, and the audience says they don't like this character, or they want another scene, and we're quickly putting that together, and we're quickly doing suddenly 500 visual effects shots. We need to have a pretty big bandwidth there at the end of the movie. So it helps me in business with a lot of companies. So that's why you might see 6, 7, 10 companies on a movie. A couple things that have to be guideposts. First off, no matter how much money I find a way to save, a bad movie is never going to make money, right? And so the odds, there's no comparison, right? And so I always have to know that in the end we have to get great work, because great work does bring the audience in. Great work does provide a key to our marketing, and so that goes kind of without saying that that's the first priority. Now, we have contracts that describe the work, and contracts that we can rely on to point to, why we shouldn't be paying for something additional or change order or something like that. But I think over the last couple of years, everybody in my position have become more realistic about the vagaries of those contracts, and also the difficulties of finishing movies right now. As I pointed out earlier, the movie process is not just a director's cut now. You have a director's cut, then you have kind of a studio cut, and then you have an audience cut, because we do these audience previews and we adjust the movie to those. And all along the way, we've contracted a visual effects work that's going to be rolling out in a very predictable schedule, and that schedule gets disrupted. So I think we're pretty sensitive to that, but I think the short answer to your question is that we get no points for making a bad movie. So we always have to wake up every day going, wow, no matter how good that deal is, if I'm pressuring this company, or if they are mismanaged, or if they made a wrong choice, or if we've given them direction late in the game, I might be able to argue it in, business to business, or win it in court, but it's of no value if it affects the film. If we miss a release date, the amount of money we've lost is 10 times whatever the contract was that we were fighting over.